It is important to discuss about leadership skills, and it is important to analyze the events as they come through from people that were in decision-making processes. Today, I have the distinct pleasure and honor to welcome Lieutenant General Demokritos Zervakis, who's the former Chief of the National Guard of the Republic of Cyprus. My name is Dr. Marios Eftimiopoulos. I'm the CEO of Strategy International, and this is Prime Analysis. Dear General, thank you very much for coming at our Prime Analysis.
Thank you for the invitation, Dr. Eftimiopoulos, dear Marios. It is indeed a pleasure for me being here with you.
Thank you very much. It is a great pleasure and honor, and I know of your busy schedule, but I also know of your high-level qualities, and I want to start from these, if that's possible, because here at Prime Analysis, we are attempting to do a discussion that really starts from the personality itself. So I would like to start or ignite, if you want, our discussion with a few words about your life experiences.
It's good that you said a few words, otherwise we need a long period of time to discuss 44 years in my career in the armed forces. If I have to discuss about myself, there are quite a few milestones that are important that I might I can display here. First of all, from my initial years from the military academy, I think the most important milestone is that from already on the fourth year of my military academy, I've been outside. I've been as an exchange cadet in West Point in the United States, and the same kind, École des Saint-Cyr in France. So from already, they not looking for today as how it is today, and in the relation between the armed forces, it was important for me to be very early in my career, knowing the international environment and how other armies interact. I think that was important for me. Later on in my career, I kept up working with artillery because it was important as an artillery officer. It is important to be a professional at your own arm, at your own speciality before going at the upper level. So climbing up the ladder, it is important to get the experience to become what we become in the end. So that I was one of the first as well Greek officers participate in a UN mission that was in UNICOM. And later on, if I have to say about that, apart from being a commander of two very special units, artillery units in MLRS and Panzerhaubitzer, it was important that I was at the same time 3 years initially at the EU, working at the delegation, the military delegation. The initial years were the structure of ESDP, then ESDP was created. So I was being the first ones that were working in ESDP. And later on, that assisted me a lot, along with my other academic records, to become a defense policy director in the Hellenic General Staff, and later on become a general, commanding the island of Chios, being here in Cyprus as a chief of staff, and then first army commander, Greek first army commander for 2 years, and later on for 3.5 years, a chief of the National Guard of Cyprus.
Which is a long-standing position.
It is indeed.
And I think you actually served it at a time when you made a very positive impact, as well as your predecessors. But at this stage, we were talking more on bilateral relations and multilateral relations, considering the changing landscape, the strategic landscape in the East Med.
Exactly. It's interesting time. It means it is a time that East Med begin to become again important for world affairs, because somehow it was backstage for many years. So it was a time that Eastern Mediterranean and the Middle East was again in the center of a sort of center of gravity of international relations, and we see this happening today. So it was an important time, and to interrelate and for international military cooperation, not only with the countries around Cyprus and Greece, but also the countries farther away, looking at the Euro-Atlantic in the dimension, I would say.
Very good. So let's go a few years back. I want to ask you some very important but simple questions, which I think they defined you also not only as a decision maker or as a general, but also define you as a person, at least from the discussion that we have had so far between us. Decision making and collective decision making when it comes down to training processes. You said you were at West Point and then you were in France. The teaching element, how important was for you to embed into your everyday working environment?
It is important. We are always on the teaching and learning process. I would say it's a constant experience that you have. No one can become a general just like that.
Yes.
So what you are is your experience. So it depends what positions you have taken, training yourself, and it gives you the experience as well to train others. So coming up to the level of a general, it means that at the same time everybody is looking at you and trying to be taught by you. So giving the example is also important. So looking at decision making, it is important that it also should be always a collective. In the end, you take the decisions as a commander, but definitely you have to have the others on board, because you might take a decision, but who is going to implement it? And I think that's the important part. It's not only the one is the leader only, it's also the people that will follow the leader to do the job. So it needs a training process is constantly in all levels, I would say, of command.
So allow me to continue on. Throughout your years of experience, you've established also a diplomatic level of approach with regards to negotiations of several things that were important. You spent time on during the setup of the SDP. Very important. How effective can a diplomatic negotiation at the level of the European Union members be, and what are movements that people should do when they represent their country? I know it is a very heavy burden to say that one represents his own respective national state. How was it when it came down to negotiations?
It's a very good and tricky question. What it is important to understand within the European, but also in any international, let's say, cooperation, there are officers like the European Union and like NATO. There are officers that work with the delegations and officers who work within the alliance or within the European Union in the, I would say, in the staff. So there's a different. They do a different job. They have a different perspective. They're doing their own. So the ones are considered international officers working with an international, let's say, alliance or organization, and the others are considered national representatives. The important part is to find the right. You have your own, let's say, background and your own giving directions of how to deal with certain things. The important part is to find the point that everybody agrees on. So there's a lot of back and forth.
Yes.
There were many discussions in many issues. We found ourselves discuss even in 1 o'clock in the night in order to find an agreement. But that is the important part, that in the end we did find an agreement that we all agreed. So
I guess the skills, the linguistic skills, the cultural skills,
exactly.
The ability to interact.
The word that was common was constructive ambiguity.
Constructive ambiguity.
We
That's
could discuss for a long time for would, should, will, could.
Yes.
Just for one word, we can discuss for half an hour. What is important now, I take that in the European Union is, and this goes vis-a-vis, it's also the military scale and CSDP. If European Union has displayed that if there is a political will, they can do things can be done. So irrespective of what is said in daylight, what is discussed, if there is a political lead, the political masters agree, If the Council, so the European Council agrees in the end, then we can go forward. So it's easy if there's a will, common will, to go forward.
I want to go slowly into the international and peripheral elements and things that are taking place around us in the latest years. I know that your experience has been great. It has been evidently shown, and the way even that you proceed with your statements and arguments clearly show this expertise. I want to start, since we started with the EU, I want to start with the EU, and I want to ask you a question. Where do you think we're standing with the strategic compass? What do we mean with the strategic compass in reality, in practice, and how can we what can we anticipate from the strategic compass from the EU?
Well, as I said, been since 2002 following what the EU is doing, I have to remind you that the strategic compass is like déjà vu. Right. Definitely, it gives timelines. Definitely, it's more constructive. Definitely, there are tangible results. You can see that with how we dealt in the issue of Ukraine, that we agreed. There was agreement of how to support Ukraine in their arms and the cooperation that is going on mainly in the arms sector. But I think the important part is that when you talk about 5,000 ready reaction force somehow, that's the same thing we talked in 99 in Helsinki. So there are things that are moving fast. It's not in the infancy.
Plus?
Yes, but that's another thing. So, but I mean, that is something that we do. There's a lot being moved forward, but still there's things that should be done. And I think it's the right moment. And going a little bit to Russian invasion in Ukraine, that was important, let's say, bell ringing for Europe in order to come together and be more reliable as an international player, not only providing a sort of smart power, but having also hard power in order to...
So your recommendation at this point is this is the time for unity in the European Union?
It's obvious. I mean, and there are steps taken towards this direction. Definitely, we have seen that coming.
Very good. Question. You mentioned Ukraine and Russia, although I didn't want to go straight to this point because I want to see a bit the EU-NATO relations in this case, but allow me to make a small detour, if you want, and talk a bit about Russia and Ukraine. How much did Russia and Ukraine affect the EU, and how much did it affect countries such as Cyprus, being in the southern corner edge of the East Med?
Obviously, you can see the economical and the financial impact that is we have all of this war, which is not is obvious also in our southern flank, and that was important also that we could see the immigration flows, because when there is a financial problem, when you see coming down in the sub-Saharan section, then there is definitely an influx of immigration flows coming to what is considered Europe, to the north. So I think that's important thing to understand, that something that is happening here has impact all around those. So it definitely had impact in not only Cyprus, Greece, but also in Europe in general. What we say about the crisis is that what we saw there is that deterrence failed.
Right.
Deterrence failed. That is clear for what can be said. I don't want to go to the more of that, but deterrence failed. I think Ukraine did not did not display tangible deterrence, and so it failed strategically, but also Putin failed, because in that sense he wanted a quick victory, which it is not there. So now we're in a stalemate. So in essence, it was invasion, and it was good that all nations were behind Ukraine, because then we might see what's coming up for other nations as well. Right. So that was important.
This war in Ukraine, I mean, still goes on. It doesn't seem to be a viable solution at this point, just to end the war atrocities in between them. Do you think that the European Union, for example, or any other power for that matter, because we will also cover a few other areas as well, but do you think that there can be a power or an organization or a union such as the European Union which can actually put an end to the current state of affairs between Ukraine and Russia?
Can there be? No, I don't think so. Definitely, it should be. Is there any win-win solution right now?
No, I don't think so.
So, I mean, that's the point. What is a win-win solution for both now in this? So it's a stalemate. And looking at who talks today about that war, the media are somewhere else.
Right.
So there are things that are going on around that no one believed. I go back to my professor Colin Gray. When in 1989 everybody was happy, thought there's an end of war, end of whatever, the liberal democracy is going on. So the end of history.
Yes.
But it was a beginning of a new era. In 1989, I truly believed that now we're going to live more interesting times, because there were many hidden wars, even during the Cold War, which are now openly, we can say that now in the overt. So now my professor Colin Gray said that bad times always return and sheriffs will always be wanted. I think that somehow answers your general questions.
Right.
And
Indeed.
this it is, bad times. Who believed in,
So it's a crossroad, basically.
in October 2021, whatever the climate was, that there was going to be a Russian invasion in Ukraine? How rational was that period of time? But it happened. So were we ready? No, we were not.
But the
ready.
first signs were there since 2009, 2011,
The signs
then
were there.
2014 with the invasion of Crimea.
Definitely. And what was the response of?
Right.
Of
So we were
West?
late in unifying ourselves into a common path at
I
this
think
stage.
so. Yes. I think so. Yes.
Okay.
And
Moving ahead, EU-NATO relations. We mentioned the CSDP and we mentioned the strategic compass. We also mentioned the reactionary forces. But we all know that NATO had decided the NATO reactionary forces from a long period of time. And one of the agreements between EU and NATO was not duplicate efforts. What's your intake on this? More on the militaristic way, I would suggest.
the one is an organization, the other is an alliance.
Right.
That's a major distinction of these relations, and they can work together. They can do together things. I think that's an important part of these relations. Now, so I think that's a clear distinction. One is alliance, one is organization, and so one has a soft power but also and the other has a hard, somehow more displaying hard power.
Yes.
Now, if we want to be clear, I think Europe needs to have a security to become more hard power than it is around. Definitely, and that will.
But can they work together?
That is also yes.
They're already doing
yes,
it.
they're already doing it. In practice, they're the same. The political leadership. We have to look what is the problem of this relation. Definitely, the problem of this relation is that the different perspectives have some members of the alliance have of how to move on, and what some members, certain members of the alliance, think about the relations with the EU, how open and how if it can be more inclusive to all member states. I think that's a major problem that goes now today, which is the problem that that Turkey does not recognize Cyprus. I think that's a major problem in this in the relation between the two organizations. Be clear about that.
And while you're talking about NATO and the member alliances, and I was actually thinking of Turkey as well. Turkey is a member of NATO, and it is not a member of the EU. Mm-hmm. Cyprus is a member of the EU, but it is not a member of NATO. Mm-hmm. Where do you see things going, considering, as you said, the volatility and the changing landscape, and which also creates opportunity, as you correctly put? Where do we stand with this? Where's the Euro-Atlantic dialogue in all of this?
Well, first of all, we have to look generally where Turkey stands in the international affairs. Mm-hmm. I think that's an important question to answer. What do we expect from Turkey to do? What we think Turkey is going to do, and what do we know about Turkey and how is it reacting today? We see that it's taking different stance in many international issues, talking about during the Russian-Ukraine crisis invasion, they goes with both parts. We see what's going now today in the war against the terrorist organization Hamas that Israel is undertaking, and I'll give you an example. If you remember back, you talked about Crimea. Just a month after the Russian Crimea invasion, Turkey invaded somehow, for security reasons, Iraq and Syria.
Right.
So, I mean...
And we have the tendency to forget about that, too.
So we tend to forget that. So that's why I say it was important that the international community stands firm again behind Ukraine, which is...
But isn't this a security threat somehow to NATO members as well? I mean, you have Turkey who plays a role within NATO, but at the same time it has an alliance with Iran, it has an alliance with Russia. It tries to find its own sequence of events in order to be a more peripheral party, not only in the Black Sea, but also in the East Med, maybe in the Middle East as well. How can somebody trust a member state of NATO when we share the same values, supposedly? How can one do that?
Well, it definitely is that's more geopolitical. It's a geopolitical position of Turkey. Is more that the army that it has. But definitely, I'm not going to answer the questions. The question goes to the ones that have trust Turkey as a player. When I don't know if you heard Erdogan just 2 days ago boasted that our heart goes from the Adriatic to the to the China. So
yes.
I mean, actually named Thessaloniki and Jerusalem.
Yes,
and we're not going to leave our brothers. Yes. So, in essence, there are more. What we should look now as we should look maybe at Turkey as a strategic competitor. I think that's an important thing to look about. It's a strategic competitor that because its position and its membership, NATO membership, looks differently. But definitely, it's something that we should look at.
Part of the NATO alliance is to respect each other and respect the borders of each other, and I think they don't do that.
No, definitely. You can see that what's happening.
It doesn't help the dialogue.
It doesn't. What's happening between in the Aegean with Greece, and you see still
with migration as well in 2020.
More than 1/3 of Cyprus is still under occupation. So I mean, it's not. It's clear.
And I will go into Cyprus, and I'll try to somehow mix it with the Middle East. But I want to stay a bit on Turkey and the Middle East. And I want to get your professional, your scientific opinion at this point. Turkey has been operating in, as you said, in northern Iraq and in Syria, has been going in and out. Lately, with the cases taking place with the war in Israel on Gaza, Erdogan came out and said we were always peaceful about Turkey. They were always peaceful. They never invaded anybody. They never did atrocities. But here we are in the summer of 2023. There were the case Nakhchad, Nagorno-Karabakh. There was the constant support of Turkey into the kind of solution that President Aliyev brought, while at the same time Turkey continues to bomb northern parts of Syria and northern parts of Iraq. As a scientist now, because you're now an expert on those things, not only as a general, but as a former general. Where do you think this will end? Where do we go with regards to the geostrategic landscape on the security architecture of that area and that territory?
As you rightly said, there are a lot of questions coming up, but I do not want Turkey to monopolize this issue. I look at it more broadly. I want to make a distinction between the day that Hamas, the terrorist attack, that day, because before it was a landscape that had a lot of prospects for peace. If you remember, it was close to have a agreement between Saudi Arabia and Israel, which was a breakthrough in the international environment. I think I also said in the past that we're looking, definitely we're in a security triangle, and the triangle of crisis, as we said, going to the Middle East from the then to Northern Africa, and the edge was changing, either the Balkans, either the Caucasus, where we see right now Ukraine. What we experienced the past years due to after the Abraham Accords and Negev platform was that there was at least we could see an axis of security coming up and stability, and that was a break with the Hamas terrorist attack. Did a break to that. In that, if it did not happen, we had an agreement, and there was a different situation going from there on. So I want putting that on the table on this area. I think there are many prospects for being more stable and peacefully, and whatever. And this shows that the countries in the area want peace. Of how they reacted to Hamas, first of all, Hamas terrorist attack, and how now they're looking to Israel fight and war against Hamas. And I should that it's not against the Palestinian people; it's a war against Hamas.
Yes.
So,
but we'll come back to Israel. But I think you correctly put a few points which are very important. From 2012, there is civil instability that resulted into the fight against ISIS, which lasted for many, many years, 2019. It still continues at specific cells. And at the same time, there was the case of Libya, Mali, Chad, which is also somehow interconnected with what was happening in the Middle East. I want to get a few comments from you, from this side, on and about Northern Africa, especially from Libya South, Chad and Mali, and maybe go to the events that are happening now with Niger, and then come back if you want, and then continue on the discussion with Israel, because it's really important and really next to us.
There were a lot of hidden wars anyway from many years, so these wars are continuing in our south periphery of the European Union, and this the most. If people do not feel safe at home, definitely will have problems. At what we look today, who is now a major player in the Africa continent, Sub-Saharan Africa? We see that. We said Russia in the past. We had China playing for their own security, and France, which is now has a problem dealing with her previous with not only Mali but also in the getting out of Africa. And Turkey is there again. Mm-hmm. So the players are changing also in the Sub-Saharan Africa. Greece is now beginning to have a role as well. You can see that with what the journeys that the Minister of Foreign Affairs does in the area, and also in the national, and also there's also some military cooperation as well going on.
So what about the EU?
Well, the EU has been late as well in Africa. There's a good cooperation for many years with the African Union, but not tangible results yet in essence. As I said, there are other powers in Africa, mm-hmm. Russia, China, and Turkey is going its own independent role. And I do not want now to talk how, but I can tell you that the interests of Turkey are comprehensive, are in all areas of this cooperation.
Keeping the comprehensiveness, I want to go back to the Middle East. And I know that you had, as a general of the National Guard of the Republic of Cyprus, you had to also deal with this volatility having emerged in the area of the Middle East. At the same time, you also lived the promises of the Abrahamic Accord. So I want to start from the period of the Abrahamic Accord onwards, and the development of relations between all countries, including Cyprus, Israel, the Emirates, Greece, and so on and so forth. And to see what went wrong, you said the D-Day. So until the D-Day, until the D-Day, what did we have as a development? And you also mentioned at some point Saudi Arabia and Israel discussion. So until D-Day, what was the environment look like?
Going back to the Middle East, it was an environment with many prospects. It was clear that for some times we left the Middle East and the Eastern Mediterranean out of scope. So a lot of there was many strategic competitors coming in the area. So Russia, why not economically, at least China and Turkey for their own reasons. So it was time, and now what was good after the Abraham Accords and the Agave was that we were back. Importance of the Mediterranean was back on stage.
Right.
And it is important area since you have the AUKUS agreement, which is the Indo-Pacific, but and then you have got the Atlantic and the Mediterranean in the middle.
And now you have India also into this.
Exactly. I think if the Eastern Mediterranean is not safe, when
the logistics then are not safe.
If you see what's passing from the Suez Canal in this Mediterranean, you'll be surprised both on the water but also on the air. Then how can you move forward? So I think it's good that the renewed interest and relevance of the Mediterranean was something that is Eastern Mediterranean is something good. Now, before the D-Day, as you mentioned before, and also the prospect for energy resources. I do not see the energy resources something that creates problem. I see the energy resources something that can connect, something that it can be a cornerstone that can work for peace in a peace process in many ways, both for every country in the area. It's not an exclusive. It's more inclusive, I would say, process. So before that, the D-Day, what we see is relations of Israel and the area and the other countries in the area going more smooth. And we're close, as I said before, to the agreement with Saudi Arabia. Now, after the D-Day, things might have changed, but not that much. We should look now what will happen afterwards, because now, first of all, what were the aims? What were behind the objectives?
We will go into this, but as I know, the Abrahamic Accord, which included also Morocco, Bahrain, UAE, it also expanded into the bilateral relations between Cyprus and the UAE, as an example case, and Cyprus and other countries, including Cyprus and Israel.
I try to be more. If I want to talk about Cyprus, and at this point, I would say that it was understood that Cyprus is a safe haven, and we can see that happening today. It's a stable democratic nation, and it connects also. That was a certain axis of peace began from India, continued to the Middle East countries, the Emirates, Saudi Arabia, then Israel, Egypt, Cyprus, Greece, and goes forward. So that was a sort of an axis of stability and security. That's how argued also in the past. That's how it'll be seen. And we can say Jordan as well.
Of course.
And I would say, even though somehow Lebanon with a specific role of Hezbollah that everybody knows, but definitely there was an axis of stability and security, which somehow has now problems after the D-Day. But now Cyprus stayed in the center of this. So as a knot, you can see that as a knot.
And then D-Day comes along.
And then D-Day.
So what happens on D-Day?
Why? First of all, why D-Day? Why did Hamas? What were the aims of Hamas? They knew. They actually knew.
A terrorist.
They knew there was a terrorist. They knew. And why did this happen? And how was that not been seen? Well, when we're looking at it's not only Hamas. If you look at the Houthi in the Yemen, if you look at what you see, why a small minority like looking the Houthis are firing rockets against? So what will be the aim? The aim of this action, it seems to me, is more like chaos. Create chaos, create instability. And I do not think that it's only instability that is to be caused to Israel, but general instability. But because the chaos will go further on. So
it is of no coincidence that international powers, including France, for example, or including the United States, which are powers which welcomed not only the Abrahamic Accord, but also the leadership skill sets of Cyprus and the armed forces of Cyprus, For example, the National Guard, the agreements with the United States on National Guard in New Jersey, in order to have a more standards and more training and more collaboration. So it is of no coincidence that all these powers suddenly got engaged onto the 8th of October onwards after the attack of Hamas, not only to Israel, but also to push a message that this chaos cannot go along.
Definitely. Well, it is an important part is that, as I said before, that the United States, France was always somehow back in the area. And that you see the multi-level and multifacets agreement that were made, the Republic of Cyprus made, and especially the National Guard, and made with other countries in the area, military cooperation agreements in the area, and this, in essence, assisted or more assisted in doing, being more ready to deal with the instances that we're dealing right now. Definitely, in order to have influx of immigration of nationals from other states come to Cyprus as well.
So Cyprus now plays a pivotal role. We see the foreign ministry trying to do a corridor on humanitarianism.
Exactly.
What do you think will be the outcome of this? Is this a European project? Is this a Cyprus-led European project? Is this something that will eventually bring the parts back? Because now people are afraid that even the Abrahamic Accord is a step back. It is not only Saudi Arabia and Israel, but also the Abrahamic Accord is going steps back. Where do you think we stand with this? Because within the security spectrum, there was also the business spectrum that suddenly pushed up, and there was an opportunity or multiple opportunities for all states, including, as you said, Egypt and Jordan to realign their relations. So everything, this is on a thin line right now. So where do you think we're standing into this perspective? Is the humanitarian corridor one of the possible solutions? What are we going to do with Hamas in this case?
The humanitarian corridor is a solution. First, it needs to be realized, first of all, and that needs
in plan and in action.
In a plan, but the planning is there. The action should be an agreement, general agreement. And where do Hamas stands? I mean, where will be Hamas after that? First of all, let's look at today. We have said there's going to be a truce, a 4-day truce. That's not a 4-day truce.
No.
It begins tomorrow, and of course,
or the day after,
tomorrow, how it goes, or how it will start. But why did Hamas want a truce? Definitely, it wanted to reorganize itself.
This is their tactics on hostages, taking hostages, and then negotiating for some sort of either truce or whatever solution they want. So I don't think that Israel will actually accept that. Eventually, they cannot be. That's why 4-day truce. And then what? On the 5th day, what do? You go back to operations.
Well, the objective is definitely to destroy the Hamas military capabilities and disintegrate the leadership, political leadership. That definitely, that's a clear objective.
But Hamas is a bit more complicated. It seems that they came very organized. On the 7th of October, what I've distinguished is that they had a very interoperable capability. They attacked from sea, air, and land at the same time with minimum technological capacities, and they used human, simple logic, which actually brought the results, the negative results, towards Israel and all these committed atrocities. And one of the other things, they were going live on their cameras, committing these crimes and killing these innocent people. How can one say or project, like Erdogan, who said that it is a political organization? It is not a political organization. It is a terrorist organization which was funded and trained by someone or something that went straight on, not only against Israel, but as you said, the axis of stability.
You said it yourself. I mean, this was a surprise for everybody. Who trained them? And this definitely needed 2 years to be planned and done. And what secrecy? We definitely, what we can say is that no one expected for Hamas to do it like that, because the last period they had downgraded what they did, and even if there were warnings, no one believed that Hamas will act. The political leadership of Hamas will talk so irrationally.
Sisi said that he had warned the Israelis. Do you believe that this was the case?
I don't know if it. I do
And
not.
the Jordanian king apparently.
I definitely believe that Israel would not want to have not even one taken hostage or even one of his citizens killed. Definitely, I'm definitely sure for that.
Of course,
What might be expected is that no one believed that they have the capability that Hamas had this capability to do this harm. That did not, because there were not messages before. There was not something clear done before.
There was a video on the Washington Post recently that said that basically they somehow damaged the security apparatus of the wall that the Gaza Strip had, and they actually showcased the reliance, that fully committed reliance on technology may not be the solution. The problem,
they did not. You're right. They did not have enough force on the ground at the specific moment in order to react, and because it was a massive attack, invasion
from different sides. But the question is, Israel is an exporter of technology on security. And the damage is even higher when it comes down also to the market. I mean, human lives were lost and so on. So how do you think now Israel will continue to react with respect to Hamas, with respect to Gaza?
I mean, as I said before, there is a clear objective of this war. And
they will continue on
until Hamas is capabilities out, because there's a danger. Now, Hamas is not only a danger for Israel. Hamas is a danger for all the security in the area. We should look at the wider spectrum, not only what Hamas did against Israel, but also what Hamas did about all the security and stability in the area, and what they wanted to create chaos. This is clear. This is the strategic result out of it.
I know that from your experiences, you were always concentrating on the humanitarian relief work as well. A lot of innocent lives have died through this war, and I blame Hamas for everything. But the Palestinian people also deserved and deserve still the right to live and let live in a peaceful environment that Hamas never allowed it. Since the elections of 2005, 2006, when Mahmoud Abbas lost but he's still into power, Hamas has become more and more aggressive against the Palestinian people. The Israelis have to react because the reaction against a terrorist activity is the reaction against Hamas, and that was clear, and I think that is clear for all of us. But what can be achieved with the humanitarian corridor with regards to the Palestinian people?
That's the important part, is that in a war, no one wants to spare lives. That's clear. I'm as a military officer, I would not want to spare one life of one civilian. That's clear from our side. The humanitarian corridor must go on for the people of the Palestinian people. What we should look is that what will be the political end of this?
Can Saudi-Israel come back?
It cannot. There must be a political end in this war, because if it continues like that, then crisis will continue and instability will go. One that Hamas wanted is to have mass demonstrations not only in Western Europe but also within the Arab countries against Israel. Actually, what Hamas wanted, one of the objectives of Hamas, is to have this cooperation between Israel and the Arab state fail. I think that was one important objective of Hamas taken. Now, Hamas is the danger for security per se, and a lot should be done to have the humanitarian corridor for the people of Palestine. And we should look at the next day. What will be the next day?
The new security architecture.
What will be the new security architecture? Right. Where will the Palestinians stand? It should be, and where do Israel stand? They should live together. They must be together. What I can hope, and which is difficult to say, is that the hate between the people is not that permanent, because now people are suffering by both sides.
Yes,
I think that's an important thing to do. And it's clear that it's clear that Hamas is a terrorist organization and it should be disintegrated.
We agree. We agree on this. General, a last question. And with that, we will conclude. A new security architecture. And I know that your vision is big, is great. You're a very dimensional person, so you've seen a lot of things through your operational life as a military commander. Now as a civilian asset again, how do you think the new security architecture will be, considering Greece, Cyprus, the East Med, and the Arab world?
I go one step back before the D-Day and start from there. I'll go back before the 7th of October and start from there. That's the point at which we should start on this cooperation. So I see that there is an opportunity for security architecture that will keep all, that will have peace and stability. And we should look at the role of Turkey in the security architecture. And
positive or negative, or either?
I say that instead of incentives, we should use, the national community should use disincentives in order to have Turkey on the security architecture. Nobody can be excluded, that's for clear, because exclusions are not right.
Thank you very much, dear General, for this very, very interesting and very in-depth discussion. It was a great honor and pleasure to have you with us at Strategy International. I know that we all looked up for you on your guidance as a commander of the National Guard, as a chief of the National Guard of the Republic of Cyprus. We know that your expertise has been great, and I do thank you very much for the valuable time that you have shown to come to us. I know that you're a busy man. I know that you have other things to attend to, and thank you very much that you've spent some time with us.
No, thank you very much for this interesting discussion, because it is a discussion that went on both sides and ideas coming up. I have to say that, as you said, since I was just a former chief of the Armed Forces of Cyprus, I did intentionally refrain for discussing cooperation that was done by the National Guard and doing general, because for obvious reasons. I did not want to concentrate what I was doing before, but more or less to look at the wider setting that's going on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Indeed.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for watching Strategy International's Prime Analysis. Please like, subscribe, share, and follow our social media. My name is Dr. Marios Eftimiopoulos, and I was your host. And remember, impact makes a difference.